The night felt deliberately slow, as if time itself had decided not to rush them. The street was nearly empty, washed in a pale amber glow from the lone street lamp standing a few steps away. Its light didn't flood the space. It hovered gently, like a careful witness that refused to intrude. Somewhere in the distance, a car passed, the sound fading before it could fully arrive. Everything important existed only here, between the quiet and the soft rhythm of their breathing. He stood close enough to feel the warmth of her without touching her yet. That distance, so small yet so full, made his chest tighten. He could sense her uncertainty, not as fear, but as something precious she was holding in both hands, unsure where to place it. Her eyes kept lifting to his and then dropping again, as though the moment was too bright to look at directly. When she finally met his gaze, it was steady but unguarded, the way someone looks when they've already decided to trust, even if they don't fully understand why. She had told him earlier, in a voice barely louder than the wind brushing the trees, that she had never been kissed before. The words had landed between them with a surprising weight, not heavy in expectation but delicate like glass. He hadn't reacted the way he once might have. No smile of triumph, no teasing surprise. Instead, he had felt a responsibility settle into his bones. This was not a moment to claim, it was a moment to protect. Her hands were folded together at her waist, fingers laced tightly, knuckles faintly pale. He noticed everything, the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, the slight rise and fall of her shoulders as she breathed, the way her lips parted just a little when she grew nervous. There was an innocence to her presence, but not ignorance. It was the innocence of someone who had chosen to wait, to remain unmarked by carelessness, even when the world encouraged otherwise. He raised his hands slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. When his fingers brushed her cheek, it was almost accidental, like he was testing whether the moment would allow it. Her skin was warm, softer than he had expected, and she leaned into his touch before she seemed to realize she was doing it. That small movement told him more than any words could have. It was permission, fragile and sincere. The air felt thicker as he stepped closer. He could smell her faint perfume, something light, almost natural, like clean skin warmed by sun. She swallowed, her throat moving visibly, and her lashes fluttered as her eyes closed for a second, then opened again. She was preparing herself, he realized, not bracing for impact, but opening a door she had kept locked for a long time. He rested his forehead against hers, a pause meant to steady them both. The world narrowed to the space between their faces, to the shared warmth of breath. He didn't rush. He wanted her to feel every second, to know she was safe inside it. His thumb brushed her cheek again, slower this time, tracing nothing more than reassurance. When he finally leaned in, it wasn't driven by desire so much as intention. His lips met hers gently, almost cautiously, like he was learning a language he didn't want to mispronounce. The kiss was soft, unhurried, more of a promise than an act. He didn't deepen it. He didn't ask for more. He simply stayed there, letting the moment exist as it was. She froze at first, not pulling away, just surprised by the reality of it. Then gradually her body relaxed. The tension in her shoulders eased, her hands loosening at her sides. She exhaled into the kiss, a small, unguarded sound that made his heart stutter. There was wonder in that breath, a quiet realization that the moment she had imagined so many times was finally real and kind. For a brief second he worried he might overwhelm her, so he pulled back just a fraction, enough to give her space. Her eyes opened slowly, searching his face, as if checking whether she had done something wrong. When she saw nothing but care in his expression, her lips curved into the faintest smile. It was shy, uncertain, but luminous. "Is this okay?" he asked softly, his voice barely louder than the night. She nodded, a single deliberate movement. "Yes," she said, and the word carried more meaning than its size suggested. He kissed her again, just as gently, letting the moment breathe. This time she responded, not with skill but with sincerity. There was no practiced rhythm, no expectation to meet. It was imperfect and honest, and that made it beautiful. He felt the subtle tremor in her, not of fear, but of emotion finally finding a place to go. When they parted, neither of them moved right away. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full. The street lamp hummed softly above them, and somewhere a leaf skittered across the pavement. She touched her lips, almost in disbelief, then laughed quietly, a sound that surprised even her. "I thought it would feel different," she admitted. Her voice warm now, lighter. "How?" he asked. "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "Bigger, maybe, louder." She met his eyes again. "But this feels right." He smiled, relief washing through him. He had wanted this moment to be gentle, to leave her with something unbroken. Watching her now, standing a little taller, eyes brighter, he knew it had. They remained there a while longer, close but not touching, letting the night settle around them. The kiss had changed something, not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet way that lasts. And as she stood beside him, calm and thoughtful, he sensed that this was only the beginning, not of desire, but of trust, which was far more powerful. She stepped back first, not because she wanted distance, but because something inside her had finally decided it was time. The smile from moments ago lingered faintly, like a memory still warm, but her eyes had changed. They no longer carried only wonder. There was a quiet seriousness now, a gathering of courage that had been waiting for the right silence. The street lamp hummed above them, and in that soft, ordinary sound, she seemed to make up her mind. "I need to show you something," she said. Her voice didn't shake, but it was careful, each word placed as if it might fall if she didn't hold it steady. He nodded at once. There was no urgency in his movement, no curiosity that felt like pressure. He simply turned his body fully toward her, giving her the kind of attention that said he wasn't going anywhere. She hesitated for a heartbeat longer, fingers lifting to the cuff of her sleeve. The fabric slid up slowly, revealing her forearm inch by inch. The skin beneath was pale in the lamplight, almost luminous until the mark appeared. It wasn't dramatic or fresh. It was old, faint, easy to miss if you weren't looking closely. But once seen, it was unmistakable, an irregular line, softened by time but not erased by it. She held her arm there, exposed, as if presenting evidence she'd carried alone for years. "I usually hide it," she said quietly. "People ask questions when they see it, or they pretend not to, which somehow feels worse." He didn't reach out right away. He knew better than to rush into the space around a wound, even one long healed. Instead, he let his gaze rest where she had guided it. Not staring, not flinching. He saw more than the mark itself. He saw the restraint in her posture, the way her shoulders were squared, not in defense but in resolve. This wasn't a confession made out of fear. It was an offering. "It's from a long time ago," she continued, "before I learned how to say no out loud, before I learned that silence can be dangerous." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of years. She wasn't asking him to imagine details, and he didn't try to. He understood that whatever story lived behind that mark belonged to her, and only what she chose to share mattered. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his hand and held it near her arm, close enough that she could feel the warmth without being touched. He waited. When she didn't pull away, when her breathing stayed steady, he let his fingers rest lightly against her skin, just beside the scar. Not on it, beside it. A choice as intentional as the kiss had been. "You don't have to explain," he said softly. "I believe you." Something in her expression broke open then, not in pain but in relief. Her eyes glistened and she looked away, blinking once as if surprised by the sudden pressure behind them. She had expected questions, maybe pity, maybe discomfort. Belief had not been on her list of rehearsed outcomes. "Most people don't," she admitted. "They want a story they can understand. Something neat, something that ends cleanly." He shook his head. "Life rarely does." She let out a breath that was almost a laugh, and almost a sob, and somehow neither. "That's why I waited," she said. "Not just for a kiss. For this. For someone who wouldn't try. To take pieces of me I've already had to fight to keep." Her honesty didn't feel heavy between them. It felt clear, like a window finally opened in a room that had grown used to being closed. He met her gaze again, his thumb brushing her wrist gently, grounding, present. "What you kept wasn't weakness," he said. "It was strength. And you're allowed to choose when to share it." She nodded slowly, absorbing the words, testing them against her own truth. Then she surprised him by lowering her arm herself, not in retreat, but because she no longer felt the need to prove anything. The mark returned to shadow beneath the sleeve, but the weight of hiding it did not. They stood close again, closer than before, though nothing about the moment felt rushed. The intimacy now was quieter, deeper, built not on touch but on understanding. She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder, tentative at first, then more surely when he didn't stiffen. His arm came around her, not enclosing, just present, a boundary that promised safety without claiming territory. "I didn't think I'd ever tell anyone like that," she said, her voice muffled slightly. "I thought it would make me feel small." "And?" he asked. "It doesn't," she said after a moment. "It makes me feel real." He smiled, resting his cheek briefly against the top of her head. You were always real. You just don't have to be alone with it anymore. The night seemed to settle around them then, softer somehow, as if the world approved of the quiet, honesty taking place beneath its indifferent stars. The street remained empty, the lamp steady, the distant sounds of life continuing without interruption. Nothing extraordinary had happened by anyone else's measure, and yet everything had changed. She straightened eventually, not pulling away but adjusting, as if learning a new balance. Her eyes were calm now, clearer than before. "Thank you," she said, "for not looking at me differently." "I am looking at you differently," he replied gently. "I see you more." That made her smile again, this time without hesitation. They didn't kiss again right away. They didn't need to. The space between them was filled with something steadier than urgency, mutual respect, shared silence, the understanding that some connections don't announce themselves loudly. They simply arrive and stay. As they finally began to walk, side by side beneath the fading glow of the street lamp, she felt lighter, not because the past had disappeared, but because it no longer had to be hidden. And he felt something just as profound, the quiet honor of being trusted with a truth that had been carried alone for far too long. Enjoyed the story? Like, subscribe, and share to support the channel.